The screen of my phone glowed with a text from Lily. "On my way, Mom. Save me some cake." I smiled, slipped the phone back into my apron pocket, and turned to check the roast in the oven. The smell of rosemary and garlic filled the kitchen, a warm blanket against the chill of the late October evening. Mark's 40th birthday. 40. It felt like a milestone, a number that demanded a proper celebration. I had spent the entire day preparing, polishing the silverware, setting the dining table with the china we only used for holidays, and baking his favorite chocolate cake from scratch. It was a small price to pay for a happy home. The doorbell rang at 6:15, right on time. I wiped my hands on my apron and walked to the front door, a practiced smile already in place. My younger brother, Daniel, stood there with his wife, Sarah. Daniel was wearing his usual weekend uniform of a pressed polo shirt and khakis, his hair neatly combed. Sarah, as always, was immaculate in a cream-colored cashmere sweater and tailored jeans. "Happy birthday to Mark," Daniel said, handing me a bottle of expensive-looking red wine. He gave me a quick, one-armed hug. "Where's the man of the hour?" "In the living room," I said, stepping aside to let them in. "He's been on the phone with the office all day, but I finally pried him away." Sarah brushed past me with a polite nod. "Smells wonderful, Claire. You always go all out." Her voice was sweet, but the words carried a familiar edge. I chose to ignore it. It was Mark's birthday, and I was not going to let her small digs ruin the evening. We moved into the living room, where Mark was indeed sitting on the couch, his phone in his hand. He looked up and smiled, a tired but genuine smile. "Daniel." "Sarah." He stood up and shook Daniel's hand, then gave Sarah a quick peck on the cheek. "Glad you could make it." "Wouldn't miss it," Daniel said, clapping Mark on the shoulder. 40, man. You're officially old." "I feel it," Mark laughed, but his laughter seemed hollow to me. He glanced back at his phone for a split second before slipping it into his pocket. I felt a tiny pinch of annoyance. He had been glued to that device all week, citing a big project at the architecture firm. I had let it slide, but on his birthday, I wished he would just put it away. Lily burst through the door a few minutes later, her duffel bag slung over her shoulder, a cool breeze trailing behind her. She was a mirror of me at her age, with the same chestnut hair and a stubborn set to her jaw. "Dad, happy birthday." She dropped her bag and wrapped her arms around Mark. His whole face softened. That was what I loved to see. "My family." "My girl," he whispered, hugging her tight. Then he pulled back and looked at her. "How are your exams?" "Exams are over, Dad." "It's fall break," she said, rolling her eyes good-naturedly. She turned to Daniel and Sarah. "Uncle Daniel, Aunt Sarah." Daniel gave her a hug, but Sarah just smiled and said, "Lily, you're getting so grown up. I can't believe you're already in college." "Claire, doesn't it just break your heart?" "It does," I said, feeling my smile tighten. "But it's a good kind of broken." I motioned everyone to the dining room. The table was a masterpiece of domestic effort. White linens, polished silver, a centerpiece of autumn leaves and candles. I had positioned Mark at the head of the table, me at the other end, with Lily, Daniel, and Sarah in between. I served the roast, the garlic mashed potatoes, and the green beans almondine. The conversation started off predictably enough. Daniel talked about his investment business, using jargon that made my eyes glaze over. Mark contributed a few observations about the housing market. Lily talked about a drama class she was taking, and Sarah nodded along with practiced interest. Then Sarah put her wine glass down and looked directly at Lily. "So, sweetie, you spend most of your time at school now. That must be wonderful. A break from all the demands at home." I paused, my fork halfway to my mouth. "Demands?" "Oh, you know," Sarah said, waving a dismissive hand. "I just mean, with your mom always being so busy and your dad working so late, it must be a lot. I remember when you were little, Claire was always running the PTA and everything. Now she's all wrapped up in that logistics company." Lily's brow furrowed. "I don't think Mom's that busy. She's always home for dinner." Sarah laughed, a light, tinkling sound that grated on my nerves. "Oh, honey, I know. I'm just saying. It's a different dynamic now, isn't it? It's just the two of them in this big house." I don't know how your Aunt Claire does it. I shot Daniel a look, but he was staring at his plate, suddenly fascinated by the green beans. He would not meet my eyes. A familiar heat began to creep up my neck. Sarah had a talent for this, for planting a tiny seed of doubt and dressing it up as concern. I forced my voice to remain level. It's a big house, but we manage just fine. Mark and I have our routines. Of course you do, Sarah said, her smile never wavering. I just worry about you, Claire. You work so hard. And you barely even take time to visit your mother anymore. I saw her last week, and she mentioned she hadn't seen you in nearly a month. That stung. A month. It had been 3 weeks, sure, but I had called her. I visited when I could. The retirement home was 30 minutes away, and with the project at work and Mark's strange moods, I had let it slide. But to hear it spoken out loud, in that tone of sweet disappointment, made it sound like a crime. I was there last month, Sarah, I said, my voice quieter than I intended. And I called her just yesterday. Oh, I'm sure you did, Sarah said, reaching for the potatoes. I'm just saying, family is important. My mother, before she passed, she would have been so hurt if I'd gone 3 weeks without seeing her. But that's just me. I'm a sentimental person. Mark, oblivious as always, cleared his throat. Claire, this roast is excellent. Truly. I looked at him, searching for a lifeline, but he had already turned back to his plate, his phone vibrating silently on the table beside him. I saw the screen flash. A text from Karen. I could not read it from my end of the table, but the sight of her name was a pinprick of cold anxiety. I quickly looked away. Dinner limped along. Daniel made a few more attempts to steer the conversation towards neutral ground, but Sarah was relentless. She commented on the drapes, asking if I had picked the color myself or if I had hired a decorator. She asked Lily about her love life in a way that made my daughter blush, and then laughed and said, I'm just teasing. You're so serious, just like your mother. The final straw was when Sarah brought up our father. You know, Daniel and I were going through some of Dad's old papers last week, she said, her voice dropping to a theatrical whisper. It was so emotional. He kept everything. Receipts, letters. It's like he wanted us to remember every detail. He was such a meticulous man. Yes, he was, I said, my throat tight. He kept all those cards you sent him from college, Sarah continued, looking at me with wide, innocent eyes. It was so sweet. But then I found a couple of letters he wrote to your mom that never got sent. He was so worried about you, Claire. He thought you were working yourself to death, never taking a break. He thought you were. I don't know, losing touch with what mattered. She put her hand over her heart. It just broke my heart to read it. A wave of shock washed over me. The air left my lungs. My father had worried about me. I knew he had, but to have it thrown at me like this, on my husband's birthday, in front of my daughter, was a calculated blow. Daniel finally looked up from his plate, his face pale. He shot Sarah a warning look, but she ignored him. I don't know why you'd bring that up now, Sarah, I said, my voice trembling slightly. It's Mark's birthday. Can we just have a nice evening? I'm just saying, she said, her voice still dripping with false sweetness. I see you running around, trying to manage everything, and I remember what Dad wrote. He said you were trying to be the perfect daughter, the perfect wife, the perfect mother, and it was going to eat you alive. He said you were too proud to ask for help. That was it. My fork clattered onto my plate. The sharp sound cut through the room's tense silence. Get out, I said, my voice flat. Sarah blinked. Excuse me, I said. Get out, I repeated, louder this time. My hands were shaking. You come into my house on my husband's birthday, you take digs at me all evening, and now you're using my dead father's words to tell me I'm a failure? Take your fake concern and get the hell out of my house. Mark stared at me, his face a mask of shock. Claire, calm down. She was not just anything, Mark. I snapped, turning on him. She's been picking at me since she walked in the door. And you've been sitting there with your face in your phone, ignoring every single comment. You didn't say a word to defend me. Daniel stood up, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. Claire, I'm sorry. This is my fault. I should have said something. Sarah, we're leaving. Sarah was already on her feet, grabbing her purse. Her face was flushed, but she still had the audacity to look offended. I was just trying to have a conversation. I didn't mean any harm. Clara's always been so sensitive. It's the stress. I told you, Daniel, it's the stress. Go, I said, pointing towards the front door. Now. They left. The front door clicked shut, and the silence that followed was deafening. I stood in the middle of the dining room, breathing heavily, the remains of my perfect birthday dinner scattered across the table. Lily was staring at me, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and confusion. Mark was looking at his empty wine glass, his jaw tight. Mom, Lily said slowly, and Sarah was out of line, but that was a lot. I looked at my daughter, and I saw doubt in her eyes. She was looking at me the way a child looks at a parent when they see them lose control for the first time. I had never screamed at anyone in front of her. I had always been the calm one, the mediator, the one who fixed things. Now I was the one who had shattered the evening. I'm sorry, honey, I whispered. I'm sorry you had to see that. I started clearing the plates, my movements jerky and robotic. I carried them into the kitchen and dumped them into the sink, the clatter of porcelain against porcelain echoing in the quiet room. Mark came in a moment later. He leaned against the counter, his arms crossed. He looked tired, and something else, distant. You could have handled that differently, he said quietly. Could I? I turned on him. You heard what she said. She was lying about Dad. She was twisting his words to hurt me. And you just sat there. I didn't want to cause a scene, he said, rubbing his forehead. It's my birthday, Claire. I just wanted a quiet dinner. Well, you got the opposite of quiet, didn't you? I snapped. And that phone of yours. You were on it all night. Who is Karen? His face went pale. It was a sudden, stark shift. His eyes darted away from mine. A colleague. I told you, it's a work project. A colleague who texts you on a Saturday night, during your birthday dinner? I asked, my voice rising again. Is there something you need to tell me? No, he said, too quickly. I don't need to tell you anything. I'm going to go check on Lily. We can talk about this later. He left the kitchen without another word. I heard his footsteps on the stairs. I stood in the kitchen, the cold light from the refrigerator buzzing in my ear. I pulled out my phone and opened his texts. I knew his passcode. It was our anniversary. I shouldn't have looked. I told myself I shouldn't have looked. But my fingers were already moving. The conversation was short. Can we talk tomorrow? It's urgent. From Karen. No context. No pleasantries. Just that single, ominous line. It was not proof of an affair. It was not proof of anything. But the timing, the secrecy, the way he had refused to look me in the eye, it all pointed to a betrayal I was not ready to name. I closed the phone, put it back on the counter, and stared at the darkened window over the sink. Outside, the streetlights were flickering to life, casting long, lonely shadows across the quiet yard. I had fought Sarah and her lies, but I had also exposed a crack in my own home. I was not sure if it was my husband's work stress or something worse, but a cold certainty settled in my gut. The birthday dinner was over. The candles on the untouched cake had long since guttered out. The family was gone or upstairs, and I was alone in the kitchen with the ruins of a perfect evening and a text I should never have read. The truth had not been revealed yet. But I knew, with a sinking heart, that it was coming. And it was going to change everything. The fluorescent lights of Apex Freight Solutions hummed a monotonous tune that Monday morning, a soundtrack I had grown used to over the past 8 years. I walked through the glass doors at 7:30, my usual time, a travel mug of coffee in one hand and a leather tote bag slung over my shoulder. The office was still quiet, just a few early birds typing away at their desks. I nodded at a couple of familiar faces, but my mind was still stuck on the weekend. Mark had been distant all Sunday, claiming a headache. He had not mentioned Karen again, and I had not asked. It was a fragile truce, built on avoidance. I settled into my cubicle, which was more of a small glass-walled office, a perk of my senior project manager status. I had a view of the main floor, the rows of cubicles where my team worked. I could see Beth at her desk, a few rows down. She was my assistant, a quiet, diligent woman in her late 20s who had been with me for 5 years. She was always there before me, her computer screen glowing. But today, she seemed different. She was staring at her monitor, not typing, and when she sensed me watching, she quickly looked down at her keyboard. A knot of unease tightened in my stomach. My first meeting was at 9 with Mr. Holbrook, the regional director. He was a sharp, 60-something man with a reputation for being fair but strict. I had always had a good relationship with him. I walked into his office with the contract renewal file for our biggest client, a retail chain called Midwest Supplies. We had been their logistics partner for 12 years, and the renewal was a formality. I had spent the last 3 weeks putting together the financial projections and performance reports. I was confident. "Claire, come in," Mr. Holbrook said, gesturing to the chair opposite his desk. He did not smile. That was my first warning. He was usually warm, calling me by my first name with a jovial tone. Today, he was formal and cold. He looked at me over his bifocals, his face unreadable. "I wanted to discuss the Midwest Supplies renewal," he said, folding his hands on his desk. "There seems to be a problem." My heart skipped a beat. A problem? I submitted the complete file on Friday. I handed it to Beth personally to send to you. He shook his head slowly. "I never received it, Claire. And when I checked the shared drive, the folder was empty. Not just the folder, the entire project file for that contract is gone. The financials, the projections, the client correspondence. Everything." My mouth went dry. "That's impossible. I saved it twice. I have a backup on my local drive." "Do you?" he asked, a hint of skepticism in his voice. "Because I checked with IT this morning. Your local drive was wiped clean of that project. They said it was done last Thursday night at 10:40 p.m. The login was yours." I felt the blood drain from my face. Thursday night? I was home on Thursday night. Mark and I watched a movie. I didn't log in. Mr. Holbrook leaned back in his chair. "Claire, I have known you for a long time. I like you. But this is a serious breach. The client is expecting the renewal terms by Wednesday. Without that file, we have nothing to present. We look incompetent." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "The only person who had access to that file, besides you, was Beth. And she says she doesn't know anything about it." I wanted to argue, to scream, to defend myself. But I knew that look on his face. He had already made a preliminary judgment. "I will get to the bottom of this, Mr. Holbrook. I promise you." "You have until Wednesday," he said, picking up a pen as a sign that the meeting was over. "If that file isn't found, I will have to escalate this to HR. You understand." I left his office with my hands trembling. I walked straight to Beth's cubicle. She was typing furiously, her face pale. When she saw me, she stopped and sat back, her hands in her lap. "Beth," I said, keeping my voice low but firm. "The Midwest file. What happened to it?" She shook her head, her eyes wide. "I don't know, Claire. I sent it to Mr. Holbrook like you told me. I swear. I put it in the shared drive and I emailed him the link. The shared drive is empty, Beth. My local drive is empty. Someone logged in as me on Thursday night and deleted everything. Tell me what you know." She looked down at her hands, twisting a silver ring on her finger. She was a terrible liar. I could see the conflict warring on her face. Her loyalty to me, her boss and mentor, versus whatever she was hiding. I don't know anything. I just did my job. Maybe it was a system error. You know how the servers have been acting up." "This wasn't a system error," I said, my voice rising slightly. "Someone did this deliberately. And you're the only other person with access to my files, Beth. I'm not accusing you, but I need you to be straight with me. Is there something going on? Something you're not telling me?" She finally looked up, and I saw tears welling in her eyes. "Claire, I didn't delete the file. I didn't." But she bit her lower lip, and I could see the effort it took for her to speak. "I copied it. I made a copy for someone else." I felt like I had been punched in the gut. "Who?" "Mr. Vance," she whispered, the name barely audible. "He's the new director of operations for the Midwest region. He came to me last Wednesday and said you had approved it. He said he needed a copy for his own records because he was doing a parallel review. I didn't think anything of it. You were in a meeting, and he said he didn't want to bother you. He seemed so official. I gave him a copy. I stood there frozen. Mr. Vance. He had been hired 2 months ago, a slick, fast-talking man who had come from a competitor. I had barely interacted with him. He had no authority over my project. He had lied to Beth, used her trust to get his hands on my work, and then somehow deleted the original to make me look like the failure. But how had he accessed my local drive? The login was mine. The IT record was clear. Beth, I said, my voice softer now. Did you give him my password? She shook her head frantically. No, I would never. I don't even know your password. I swear, I just gave him a copy of the file on a flash drive. I never touched the original. I don't know how it got deleted. I believed her. I had to believe her. She was too terrified to lie to me now. But her confession did not solve my problem. It only confirmed that I had been targeted. Okay, I said, taking a deep breath. Okay, I'll handle this. But Beth, if anyone asks, don't mention Mr. Vance. Not yet. I need to gather proof. She nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. I'm so sorry, Claire. I thought I was helping you. I walked back to my office, my mind racing. I had a target now. Mr. Vance. But how to prove it? The IT log showed my login. I would need to find evidence that he had accessed my computer, or that he had manipulated the system. I spent the rest of the morning digging through my emails, looking for any trace of communication with him, any hint of his involvement. There was nothing. He was clean, or he was careful. At noon, I decided to take a break. I walked to the break room to get some water, my head pounding. The break room was quiet, just a couple of interns eating their lunch in the corner. I filled my cup and stared out the window, watching the traffic crawl along the highway. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Mark. Working late again. Don't wait up for dinner. I sighed. He had been working late every night for the past 2 weeks. I typed a quick reply, okay. We need to talk when you get home. I put the phone away and turned to leave. Through the glass wall of the break room, I saw the parking lot below. And I saw Mark's car. It was unmistakable, that dark blue sedan with the crack in the windshield that he had been meaning to fix for months. It was parked in the visitors section, not in the employee lot. And standing next to it, laughing, was Mark. And with him was a woman I did not recognize. She was tall, with sharp cheekbones and dark hair pulled back in a professional bun. She was wearing a sleek, expensive-looking coat. She touched his arm as she laughed, and he did not pull away. He smiled at her with an ease I had not seen in months. I felt a cold wave wash over me. I knew her. I had seen her photo on the company intranet. Karen. Karen Reeves, a new consultant hired to work on a joint project between my firm and Mark's. She was supposed to be a colleague, a temporary collaborator. But the way she was touching him, the way he was looking at her, it was more than professional. It was intimate. A stab of betrayal, sharp and real, pierced through me. I should have gone down there. I should have marched out into the parking lot and demanded an explanation. But I was frozen, my hand still gripping the water cup, my heart hammering against my ribs. I watched them get into her car, a sleek white sedan, and drive away together. He had texted me that he was working late, and there he was, driving off with another woman at noon. I did not go back to my desk. I walked to the restroom and locked myself in a stall. I sat on the closed toilet lid and stared at the tile floor, my mind a blank wall of pain. Was this the stress? He had mentioned the failed business, or was this the real reason for his distance, his coldness, his refusal to talk to me? I thought about the text from Karen on Saturday night. Can we talk tomorrow? It's urgent. Maybe it was urgent. Maybe they had been planning something. Maybe he was going to leave me. The thought was so terrifying, so complete, that I almost laughed out loud. I had spent 20 years building a life with that man. We had a house, a daughter, a history. And it was all crumbling, not just at work, but at home. I stayed in the restroom for another 10 minutes, gathering myself. I washed my face, reapplied my lipstick, and walked back to my office. My legs felt like lead. I sat down at my computer and stared at the screen. The missing file. Mr. Vance. Beth's confession. And now Mark and Karen. The walls were closing in on me from all sides. I called Mark's cell phone. It went straight to voicemail. I did not leave a message. I called the office number for his firm. His receptionist picked up. "Is Mark there?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Oh, he left for a lunch meeting with the consultants from Apex," she said cheerfully. "I think they went to the grill on 5th. Do you need to reach him?" "No," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "No, thank you." I hung up. A lunch meeting. A public place. It could be innocent. It could be exactly what she said it was. But the way he had touched her, the way she had leaned into him, the easy laughter, it was not a business meeting. It was something else. The rest of the afternoon was a blur. I tried to work, but my mind kept drifting to the parking lot, to the image of my husband smiling at another woman. I went through the motions, reviewing other projects, answering emails, but my heart was not in it. At 4 o'clock, I saw Mr. Vance walking through the main floor. He was a tall, good-looking man in his mid-30s, with a confident stride and an expensive suit. He nodded at me as he passed my glass office, a smug smile on his face. I stared back at him, my expression blank. He thought he had won. He thought he had set me up perfectly. And I had no way to prove otherwise. I left work at 5:30, earlier than usual. I drove home, the familiar route feeling strange and foreign. The house was dark when I arrived. Mark was not home. I walked through the living room, touching the framed photos on the mantelpiece, the ones of our wedding, of Lily's first birthday, of our family vacations. They looked like pictures of strangers now. I sat down on the couch and waited. I waited for him to come home, to explain, to apologize, to deny. But he did not come. At 8, my phone buzzed. A text from Mark. Meeting ran long. "I'm going to crash at the office. I have an early presentation. Don't wait up." I stared at the text for a long time. He was lying. He was staying with her, or at least, he did not want to come home. I typed out a reply, deleted it, typed another, and deleted that too. Finally, I just wrote, "Okay." I turned off the lights and went to bed. I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying the day's events on an endless loop. The missing file. Mr. Vance. Beth's tearful confession. Mark in the parking lot with Karen. Each piece was a separate shard of glass, cutting me from a different angle. They were not connected. But they were all happening to me, all at once. A thought crept into my mind, dark and unwelcome. Mark had told me his firm was failing. He was stressed, desperate. What if he and Karen were not just having an affair? What if they were planning something together? She was a consultant. She had access to information. What if the missing file had something to do with them? It was a paranoid thought, a stretch. But I had learned that day that people I trusted were capable of betrayal. Beth had been manipulated, but she had still gone behind my back. Mark was lying to me. I had no reason to trust anyone anymore. I fell asleep at some point, a restless, dream-filled sleep. When I woke up, the morning sun was filtering through the curtains. I reached for my phone. No messages from Mark. No apologies. No explanations. I got up, showered, and dressed for work. I looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were red, my face pale. I looked like a stranger. I was a woman who had been betrayed by her assistant, set up by a colleague, and lied to by her husband. And I had no plan. As I drove to work, I made a decision. I could not confront Mark yet. I did not have proof. I could not go to Mr. Holbrook without evidence. Mr. Vance was a snake, but he had covered his tracks well. The only thing I could do was keep my head down, find the file, and protect myself. If I lost my job, I lost everything. And with Mark's behavior, I could not afford to lose anything. I parked the car and walked into the office, my shoulders squared, my face a mask of calm professionalism. It was going to be a long day. And it was only Tuesday. Wednesday morning arrived with a gray sky and a weight in my chest that had not lifted since Monday. The missing file deadline was today, and I had nothing. I had spent Tuesday night searching my home computer, my old backups, even my personal email, hoping to find a stray copy of the Midwest Supplies file. There was nothing. Mr. Vance had been thorough. I walked into the office with a plan to request a formal IT audit, but I knew it would take days, and Mr. Holbrook needed the file that afternoon. I was running out of options. I was in my office, staring at a blank spreadsheet when my phone rang. It was Daniel. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. Our last conversation, or rather, our last argument, had been at Mark's birthday dinner. I was still angry at him for letting Sarah say those things, but he was still my brother. Claire, he said, his voice tight. I need to see you. It's important. I'm at work, Daniel. I have a crisis. Can it wait? No, he said. It's about Mom. And Dad. I have something for you. I felt a chill run down my spine. My mother was 82, living in a retirement home about 30 minutes from my office. She had been in failing health for years, her memory slipping in and out like a tide. I had not visited her in nearly a month, just as Sarah had accused. A wave of guilt washed over me. What is it? I asked. I can't tell you over the phone, he said. I'll bring it to you. Where are you? I gave him the address for Apex, and he said he would be there in an hour. I hung up and tried to focus on the file, but my mind was elsewhere. Daniel had never been the one to initiate contact. He usually let Sarah handle all the family communications. The fact that he was coming to me directly, at my office, meant something serious was happening. Beth knocked on my glass door, her face pale. Claire, Mr. Holbrook just called. He wants to see you at 2 o'clock. He said to bring the file. I nodded, my stomach churning. I'll be there. She hesitated, hovering in the doorway. Are you okay? You look, I'm fine, Beth. Just tired. I did not have the energy to comfort her. She had betrayed me, even if it was unintentionally. I could not look at her without seeing the face of Mr. Vance's manipulation. She left, and I leaned back in my chair, closing my eyes. I had until 2 o'clock. That was 3 hours. 3 hours to find a miracle. Daniel arrived at 10:30, carrying a brown envelope. He looked thinner than I remembered, his shirt collar too loose, dark circles under his eyes. He sat down in the chair opposite my desk, clutching the envelope like it contained a bomb. What's this about? I asked, not bothering with pleasantries. He slid the envelope across the desk. This was delivered to Mom's retirement home yesterday. It was addressed to you, but she opened it by accident. She thought it was a birthday card. She's been confused lately, you know. I took the envelope. It was a plain manila color, no return address. My name and my mother's address were written in familiar handwriting. My father's handwriting. My heart skipped a beat. Is this from Dad? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Daniel nodded. He left it with a lawyer, with instructions to deliver it on your 45th birthday. That's today, Claire. I know you didn't tell anyone, but Mom remembered. She called me this morning, crying. She said she was sorry she forgot. I stared at the envelope. My 45th birthday. I had not told anyone because I had forgotten myself. The chaos of the past few days had pushed everything else out of my mind. I opened the seal carefully, my hands trembling. Inside was a single sheet of paper, yellowed with age, covered in my father's neat cursive. I began to read. My dearest Claire, if you are reading this, I am no longer with you. I am writing this letter in the hope that it reaches you at a time when you need it most. You were always my strong one, the one who held the family together when I was too weak. But strength is not the same as safety. I have watched you carry the weight of everyone else's burdens for too long. Your mother, your brother, your husband, your daughter. You give and give until there is nothing left for yourself. I know I did not always show it, but I saw the way Daniel's business deals worried you. I saw the way you smiled through the stress. I saw the way your mother relied on you for everything, even when she was too stubborn to admit it. And I know now that I failed to protect you from all of it. That is my greatest shame. That is why I set aside a small savings account in your name alone. It is not much, but it is enough. It is hidden from the family trust, from Daniel, from your mother, from everyone. The bank is First National, and the account number is written below. The money is yours, Claire. Use it to protect yourself when you need it most. Use it to build a wall or to build a bridge. Whatever you need to survive. I love you more than you will ever know. I am proud of you. Please do not carry my regrets. Carry only my love. Your father. I read the letter 3 times, each word etching itself into my heart. Tears streamed down my cheeks, blurring the ink. My father had known. He had known about the family dynamics, about Daniel's recklessness, about my mother's dependence. And he had tried to protect me in his own quiet, secret way. He had given me a lifeline, tucked away in a bank account I never knew existed. I looked up at Daniel. His face was a mask of forced neutrality. What does it say? He asked. I folded the letter and slipped it back into the envelope. It says Dad loved me, I said, my voice thick. It says he was proud of me. Daniel nodded, but I saw a flicker of something else in his eyes. Fear. Was there anything else? About the trust? About money? I studied his face. He was worried. He was always worried about money. But I did not want to lie to him, not yet. There was something, I admitted. A savings account. He set it up for me. Separately. His face went pale. How much? I don't know, I said, which was the truth. I had not checked the balance. But it's mine, Daniel. That's all the letter said. He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Claire, I need to tell you something. I should have told you years ago. But I was too scared. I waited, my heart pounding. Dad didn't just set up that account for you, he said, his voice cracking. He set it up because he knew about my mistakes. He knew I had been borrowing money from the family trust. Small amounts at first, to cover a bad investment. But then it got bigger. I kept telling myself I would pay it back, but I never did. I felt the air leave my lungs. You stole from Dad's trust? I didn't steal, he said, his voice rising. I borrowed. I had good intentions. The investment was supposed to double our money. It was a sure thing. But the market crashed, and I lost everything. I tried to cover it up. I hid the losses. Dad found out about a year before he died. He didn't confront me. He told me he would handle it. He told me he would find a way to make it right without destroying the family. The letter. The secret account. It was not a gift to me. It was a cover. A way to protect Daniel's secret by giving me a piece of the puzzle without telling me the whole truth. My father had been protecting my brother, even as he pretended to protect me. So that account, I said, my voice cold. That money was meant for me, or was it meant to pay back what you stole? Daniel dropped his head into his hands. I don't know. I don't know what he intended. He never told me. He just said he was taking care of it. I thought he was going to use the trust's other assets to cover the loss. I never knew he set up a separate account. I didn't even know about it until Mom called me this morning and told me you were getting a letter from the lawyer. I sat back in my chair, my mind spinning. My father was not the perfect protector I had imagined. He was a flawed man, trying to hold his family together with secrets and half-truths. And now I was caught in the middle, holding a secret savings account and the weight of my brother's confession. How much did you take, Daniel? I asked. About $90,000, he whispered. Give or take. $90,000. It was a fortune. It was enough to save a failing business, to pay off a mortgage, to start a new life. It was also enough to destroy a family. I looked at the clock. It was 11:30. I had to see Mr. Holbrook in 2.5 hours. I had no file, no evidence, and now my brother was telling me he had stolen from our father's estate. The pressure was crushing me. I can't deal with this right now, I said, standing up. I have a crisis at work. I need to find a missing file or I'm going to get fired. We'll talk about this later. Daniel grabbed my arm. Claire, you can't tell Mom. She doesn't know. She thinks the trust is fine. If she finds out I lost her money, it will kill her. I pulled my arm away. You should have thought about that before you took the money. He left my office, his shoulders slumped, a broken man. I watched him go, and I felt a strange mix of pity and rage. My brother, who had always seemed so put together, so successful, was a fraud. And my father, who I had idolized, was complicit in the cover-up. I needed air. I walked out of my office and down the stairwell to the ground floor, stepping outside into the cool autumn breeze. I called my mother's retirement home. The nurse put her on the phone. Her voice was frail and confused. Claire? Is that you? Yes, Mom. It's me. I got Dad's letter. There was a long pause. I could hear her breathing, shallow and labored. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I shouldn't have opened it. I didn't know what it was. It's okay, Mom. I'm glad you sent it to me. But there's something I need to ask you. Did you know about the money Daniel took from the trust? Another pause. Then a soft, trembling voice. He took money? I don't know. I don't remember. Mom, please. This is important. She sighed, a long, weary sound. Your father, he told me something, a few weeks before he passed. He said Daniel had made a mistake, a big one. He said he was going to fix it. He told me not to worry, that he had everything under control. But I knew he was worried. He couldn't sleep. He kept talking about protecting the family. Protecting Daniel, I said, my voice bitter. He was protecting Daniel. No, Claire, she said, her voice suddenly clearer, sharper. He was protecting us. All of us. He knew if the truth came out, it would tear us apart. He loved Daniel, but he loved you too. He was trying to find a way for everyone to survive. He was a good man, Claire. He was just not a perfect one. I leaned against the building, the brick cold against my back. I don't know what to do, Mom. You do what you always do, she said. You survive. And you do it with grace. I hung up, feeling hollow. My mother, in a rare moment of clarity, had given me more wisdom than I had expected. My father was not perfect, but he had tried. Daniel was not a monster, but he was a thief. And I was the one left to clean up the mess. I walked back into the office, my mind clearer than it had been in days. I had to focus on the immediate crisis. The file. Mr. Holbrook. I had to find a way to save my job. I looked at my watch. It was noon. 2 hours until the meeting. I went back to my office and called Beth in. I need you to do something for me, I said. I need you to go through Mr. Vance's calendar for the past 2 weeks. Find any meetings he had with IT or any late-night entries. And I need you to do it quietly. Beth nodded, her face pale but determined. I'll do it. I'll find something. She left, and I sat down at my computer, staring at the login screen. My father's letter was in my bag, a secret that bound me to my brother and my mother. The savings account was a weapon, but I did not know how to use it. I only knew one thing: I was on my own. Mark was not there for me. Daniel could not be trusted. My mother was too fragile. And my father was gone. At 2 o'clock, I walked into Mr. Holbrook's office. He was waiting for me, his face stern. I told him the truth. I told him about Mr. Vance, about Beth's confession, about the missing file. He listened without interrupting. When I was done, he was silent for a long moment. I believe you, Claire, he said finally. But I need proof. I can't act on accusations. You have to bring me something concrete. I will, I said. Give me until the end of the week. He nodded. 1 week. That's all I can give you. I walked out of his office, my heart pounding. I had bought myself some time. But as I walked back to my desk, I realized something else. I had to tell Mark about the money. I had to confront him about Karen. And I had to find a way to protect myself from my own brother. The secrets were piling up, and I was the only one who knew all of them. It was a lonely feeling, standing at the center of a storm, holding a letter from a dead man and a bank account that could change everything. I did not know if I was strong enough to carry it all. But I did not have a choice. Thursday evening came with a heavy silence. Mark had been home the night before, but he had come in late, after I had already gone to bed, and left early before I woke. We had not spoken a single word in 2 days. I had stopped calling him, stopped texting, stopped expecting anything. The distance between us was not just physical anymore, it was a chasm, and I had no idea how to bridge it. I was standing in the kitchen, staring at a pot of boiling water for pasta I had no appetite for, when he walked in. He looked tired, his shirt wrinkled, his hair disheveled. He did not look at me as he dropped his briefcase by the door and loosened his tie. Claire, we need to talk, he said, his voice flat. I turned off the stove. The water stopped bubbling and the sudden silence was louder than the noise had been. I leaned against the counter, crossing my arms. I've been waiting for you to say that for a week. He sat down at the kitchen table, not waiting for an invitation. He stared at his hands, his fingers intertwined, as if he were trying to find the right words. I sat across from him, my heart pounding. This was it. The conversation I had been dreading. I've been seeing someone, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Well, not seeing exactly. I've been talking to someone. A lot. Her name is Karen. I felt the words hit me like a physical blow. I had known. I had seen them in the parking lot, I had seen the text. But hearing him say it out loud, in our kitchen, was a different kind of pain. It was real now. It was undeniable. Seeing, I repeated, my voice cold. Talking. What does that mean? Mark, are you having an affair? He looked up, and for the first time, I saw something other than distance in his eyes. I saw fear. No, he said. It's not physical. It's emotional. I've been confiding in her. About my work, about my fears. Things I should have been telling you. Fears, I said, my voice rising. What fears? Mark, that your business is failing, that you're losing money, that you're going to lose the house you think I don't know, you think I haven't noticed the calls from the bank, the bills piling up on your desk. He stared at me, stunned. How did you know I'm your wife, Mark? I know things. I know you've been lying to me about the state of your firm. I know you've been borrowing money from your partners. I know you're scared of going bankrupt. And instead of telling me, instead of letting me help you, you went to some consultant and spilled your heart out to her. He dropped his head into his hands. I was ashamed, Claire. I didn't want you to see me fail. You've always been the strong one, the one who holds everything together. I didn't want you to look at me and see a loser. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to throw something across the room. But instead, I just sat there, feeling the weight of his words. He was not having an affair. He was having a breakdown. And instead of turning to his wife, he had turned to a stranger. Mark, I said, my voice softer now, I have never once thought you were a loser. You're my husband. We made a commitment to each other. When you fail, I fail. When you succeed, I succeed. That's what marriage is. You don't get to hide your problems from me. You don't get to go crying to someone else because you're too proud to tell me the truth. He looked up, his eyes red. I know. I'm sorry. I've been a coward. I ended things with Karen today. I told her I couldn't see her anymore. I told her I had to fix my marriage. I should have felt relief. I should have felt joy. But all I felt was exhaustion. And what about the business? What are you going to do about that? I don't know, he admitted. We're in debt. Deep debt. I've been trying to find a way out, but I can't. If I don't come up with $100,000 in the next few months, the firm will go under. And we'll lose the house too. $100,000. My father's savings account. The money Daniel had taken. It was almost the exact amount. I felt a cold chill run down my spine. My father's letter had said the money was to protect me. But now it could save my home, save my marriage. It was a choice I never thought I would have to make. I have money, I said, the words coming out before I could stop them. My father set up a savings account for me. It's about $90,000. I can use it to pay off the debt. Mark stared at me, his face a mix of shock and hope. Your father, you never told me about this. I just found out today, I said. Daniel brought me the letter. It was a secret. But it's mine, Mark. It's mine to use. He reached across the table and grabbed my hand. Claire, that's incredible. That could save us. That could save everything. I pulled my hand away. Wait. I need to say something first. I will give you this money. But only on one condition. We go to marriage counseling. You cut all ties with Karen, completely, no work contact, no social contact, nothing. And you never hide anything from me again. Not about money, not about work, not about your feelings. If you lie to me one more time, I'm done. Do you understand? He nodded, his eyes wet with tears. I understand. I promise. I'll do whatever it takes. I did not feel triumphant. I did not feel relieved. I felt like I had just made a deal with the devil. My father's money, meant to protect me, was now being used to fix my husband's mistakes. It felt like a betrayal of my father's trust, even though I knew he would have understood. We sat in silence for a long moment. The weight of our conversation hung in the air, a fragile thread of trust that we were both trying to hold on to. What about your work? Mark asked finally. You said you had a crisis. What happened? I told him everything. The missing file, Mr. Vance, Beth's confession, Mr. Holbrook's ultimatum. He listened, his face growing more concerned with each detail. When I was done, he shook his head slowly. That's a setup, Claire. Someone is trying to get you fired. Do you have any idea why? It's Mr. Vance, I said. He wants my job. He wants to bring in his own team, and I'm in his way. But I can't prove it. Beth gave him a copy of the file, but she didn't give him my password. He must have found another way to access my computer. Mark was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I know a guy. A cybersecurity specialist. He works at a firm I used to collaborate with. He's good. He might be able to trace the login. He might be able to find proof that someone else accessed your account. I looked at him, surprised. You'd do that for me, Claire. I haven't been a good husband, he said, his voice heavy with regret. But I'm going to try. Starting now. Give me his number. I'll call him tomorrow. I wrote down the contact information on a napkin and slid it across the table. He pocketed it, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a small flicker of hope. Maybe we could rebuild. Maybe we could save each other. That night, I called Daniel. It was late, but I knew he would be awake. He always was these days. Claire, he said, his voice wary. What do you want? I know you took the money, I said. I know Dad knew about it. I know he set up the account to cover your tracks. But I'm not going to expose you. Not yet. I'm using the money to save Mark's business. But I need you to do something for me. What? I need you to be honest with the family, I said. I need you to tell Mom and Sarah the truth. I need you to come clean about the theft and start paying it back. If you don't, I will take legal action. I've got the letter from Dad. I've got the bank records. I will use them. He was silent for a long time. Then, in a voice that was barely a whisper, he said, You're serious. I'm very serious, Daniel. You've been lying for years. It's time to stop. It's time to be a grown-up. I'll do it, he said finally. I'll tell them. But Claire, it's going to destroy everything. Sarah will leave me. Mom will never forgive me. That's not my problem, I said. You made the choices. Now you have to face the consequences. I hung up, my hands shaking. I had just threatened my own brother. I had just used my father's secret savings account to save my husband's failing business. I was holding the threads of my family's secrets, and I was pulling them tight, one by one. The next morning, I went to the bank. I transferred the $90,000 from my father's account to our joint account, the one Mark and I shared. It was a terrifying amount of money. It was my safety net, my father's final gift, and I was giving it away. But I told myself it was for the best. It would save the house. It would save Mark's firm. It would give us a second chance. Mark called the cybersecurity specialist, a man named Roger. Roger agreed to look into the IT logs at Apex. He said he would need remote access to the system, which I could not give him. But he said he could work with our internal IT department if I could get him a contact. I called Beth and asked her to send me the contact for the head of IT. She did, without question. She was trying to make up for her mistake, and I was letting her. Later that afternoon, I went to the retirement home to visit my mother. I found her in the common room, sitting in a wheelchair by the window, staring out at the parking lot. She looked smaller than I remembered, frilier. Her hair was thin and white, and her hands were gnarled with arthritis. Mom, I said, sitting down beside her. How are you feeling? She turned to look at me, her eyes cloudy. Claire, is that you? Yes, Mom. I came to see you. She smiled, a frail, uncertain smile. You don't come often enough. But I know you're busy. You always were. I took her hand. I'm sorry. I've been so wrapped up in my own problems. But I'm here now. We sat in silence for a while. Then she said, Your brother came to see me yesterday. He was crying. He told me about the money. He told me everything. My heart sank. He did, yes. He said you made him tell me. He said you threatened him. I didn't threaten him, I said. I told him he had to be honest. That's all. She nodded slowly. You were right. He needed to tell the truth. I've known about the money for years. Your father told me before he died. He said Daniel had made a mistake and he was going to fix it. I never said anything because I didn't want to shame him. But I should have. Maybe he would have stopped earlier. I squeezed her hand. You did what you thought was right. So did Dad. I'm not angry at you. She turned to look at me, her eyes suddenly sharp. But you're angry at Daniel. I can see it in your face. Yes, I admitted. I'm angry. He stole from our family. He lied to us. And Dad covered it up, which made it worse. It was his love that made him cover it, she said. Your father loved Daniel so much that he couldn't bear to see him fail. It wasn't right. But it wasn't wrong either. It was just love. Flawed, human love. I felt tears prick at my eyes. My mother, who had seemed so lost and confused, was suddenly the wisest person in the room. She was right. My father's love was flawed, just like my marriage, just like my brother, just like everything else in my life. Thank you, Mom, I said, leaning over to kiss her cheek. You'll be all right, she said. You're strong. You always were. I left the retirement home with a heavy heart but a clearer mind. My mother had forgiven Daniel. Now I had to find a way to do the same. Not right away. Not without proof of change. But eventually. That night, Mark came home early. He brought flowers and a bottle of wine. He cooked dinner, something he had not done in years. We ate in silence, but it was a comfortable silence. A healing silence. I talked to Roger, he said, breaking the quiet. He's going to run a trace on your IT system. He said he'll have results in a few days. Thank you, I said. Thank you for doing that. He reached across the table and took my hand. I'm not going to let you down again, Claire. I promise. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. But the weight of the past week was still crushing me. My brother's theft. My husband's emotional affair. My father's secrets. The missing file. Mr. Vance. It was all too much. But for the first time, I felt like I was not facing it alone. I had Mark back. I had my mother's blessing. I had a plan. It was not a perfect plan, but it was something. And at that moment, something was enough. Monday morning arrived with a cold, steady rain that matched my mood perfectly. I had spent the weekend going over my father's letter again and again, trying to find some hidden meaning, some instruction I had missed. There was nothing. The money was gone, transferred to our joint account, and Mark had already used half of it to pay off his firm's most urgent debts. The rest would follow in the coming weeks. My safety net was gone, and I was left with nothing but a fragile hope that my marriage would survive. I walked into the office with a new resolve. Roger, the cybersecurity specialist Mark had hired, had sent me a preliminary report on Friday evening. His findings were promising. He had found evidence that my login credentials had been used from a different IP address on the night the file was deleted, an IP address that traced back to a coffee shop near the office. It was not conclusive proof, but it was a thread. He said he could do more if he had access to the internal server logs, but for that, he needed authorization from our IT department. I had not yet asked for it, afraid of alerting Mr. Vance. I was at my desk, going over the report, when Beth knocked on my door. Her face was pale, and she was holding a piece of paper. Claire, I found something, she said, her voice trembling. I went through Mr. Vance's calendar like you asked. I found a meeting he had with the head of IT, a guy named Roger, about 3 weeks ago. It was a private meeting, not on the official schedule. I only found it because I checked his assistant's calendar. She had it logged as a systems review. I took the paper from her. It was a printout of the calendar entry. Systems review was written in the notes section, with no further details. My blood ran cold. Mr. Vance had met with the head of IT. He had access to the system. He could have easily manipulated the login records, or even gotten my password from someone in the department. This is it, I said, standing up. This is the proof we need. I'm going to Mr. Holbrook. Right now. Beth nodded, her eyes wide. Do you want me to come with you? No, I said. Stay here. If anyone asks, you don't know anything about this. I'll handle it. I walked to Mr. Holbrook's office, my heart pounding. He was in a meeting with 2 other department heads, but I knocked on the door and asked to speak with him privately. He excused himself and stepped into the hallway. Claire, this isn't a good time, he said, frowning. This will only take a minute, I said. I have new evidence. I found a meeting between Mr. Vance and the head of IT 3 weeks ago. It was a private meeting, not on the official schedule. I think Mr. Vance manipulated the IT system to make it look like I deleted the file. Mr. Holbrook's face tightened. He was a cautious man, always wanting to verify before he acted. That's circumstantial, Claire. It's not proof. I know it's not proof, I said, my voice rising. But it's enough to launch an investigation. If you authorize a full IT audit, I'm confident they'll find the truth. He hesitated, rubbing his chin. An IT audit is expensive. And it takes time. I can't authorize something like that without board approval. Then call a board meeting, I said. Present the evidence. Let them decide. I'll present my case. All I'm asking for is a chance to defend myself. He studied me for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Fine. I'll schedule a board meeting for tomorrow morning at 10. You'll have 15 minutes to present your case. Prepare your evidence. I walked back to my desk, my hands shaking. 15 minutes. That was all the time I had to save my career. I spent the rest of the day organizing my evidence. The calendar entry, Roger's preliminary report, Beth's written statement. I also compiled a timeline of Mr. Vance's interactions with my team, showing a pattern of interference that had been growing since his arrival. It was not a smoking gun, but it was a compelling narrative. That evening, I told Mark about the board meeting. He was supportive, but distracted. He had spent the day at his firm, trying to salvage what he could with the money I had given him. We were both fighting our own battles, but at least we were fighting them together. You'll do fine, he said, squeezing my hand. You've always been good under pressure. I wanted to believe him. But as I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I could not shake the feeling that I was walking into a trap. Mr. Vance was cunning. He had outmaneuvered me once. He could do it again. The next morning, I arrived at the office early. I had my folder of evidence, my notes, and a carefully rehearsed speech. The board meeting was scheduled for 10 o'clock in the main conference room. I spent the hour before the meeting going over my notes, my heart racing. At 9:50, I walked to the conference room. The board members were already seated, Mr. Holbrook, 2 other regional directors, and the company's chief financial officer. Mr. Vance was not there, which surprised me. I had expected him to be present to defend himself. Mr. Holbrook motioned for me to sit at the head of the table. We're ready when you are, Claire. I took a deep breath and began. I presented my timeline, my evidence, my accusations. I explained how Mr. Vance had manipulated Beth into giving him a copy of the file, how he had used his contact in IT to delete the original, how he had framed me to make me look incompetent. I was calm and measured, sticking to the facts. When I was done, there was a long silence. Then the CFO, a woman named Patricia, spoke up. This is serious, Claire. If what you're saying is true, we need to investigate immediately. But we also need to hear Mr. Vance's side of the story. Where is he? Mr. Holbrook cleared his throat. Mr. Vance called in sick this morning. He said he had a stomach flu. A wave of cold dread washed over me. He was avoiding the meeting. He was hoping I would fail to convince the board without his presence. Then I recommend we postpone the decision until Mr. Vance can be present, Patricia said. It's only fair to hear both sides. I opened my mouth to argue, but before I could speak, the conference room door opened. A young man I barely recognized walked in. Leo, a junior accountant from the finance department. He was a quiet, unassuming man in his late 20s, the kind of person who blended into the background. I had spoken to him maybe twice in my entire time at the company. Mr. Holbrook, he said, his voice shaking. I need to say something. Mr. Holbrook looked surprised. Leo, this isn't the time. We're in the middle of a board meeting. I know, Leo said, stepping forward. But I overheard something. A few weeks ago, I was working late, and I saw Mr. Vance and the head of IT in Mr. Vance's office. They were laughing. Mr. Vance said, she'll never know what hit her. By the time they find out, I'll already have her job. I didn't think anything of it at the time. I thought it was just office gossip. But then I heard about the missing file. And I put 2 and 2 together. The room fell silent. The board members exchanged glances. Patricia leaned forward. Leo, you're saying you heard Mr. Vance admit to plotting against Claire. I didn't hear him admit to anything specific, Leo said. But the tone of it was malicious. He was talking about someone, and I'm pretty sure it was Claire. And there's more. I saw him logging into IT's administrative system that same night. I didn't think anything of it at the time, but now I realize he had access to things he shouldn't have had access to. Mr. Holbrook's face was a mask of controlled fury. Do you have any proof of this, Leo? Leo reached into his pocket and pulled out a flash drive. I made a copy of the administrative logs from that night. I didn't know if it was important, but I kept it. just in case. He handed the flash drive to Mr. Holbrook. Mr. Holbrook plugged it into his laptop and scrolled through the files. His face grew darker with each passing second. This is conclusive, he said finally, looking up at the board. The logs show Mr. Vance accessed Claire's account on the night the file was deleted. There's no question about it. He deliberately sabotaged her. The board erupted into whispers. Patricia shook her head. This is a serious breach of trust. We'll need to fire Mr. Vance immediately. And the head of IT too, if he was complicit. I sat back in my chair, my legs trembling. Leo had saved me. A junior accountant, someone I barely knew, had taken a risk to come forward. He had no reason to help me, but he did. It was a reminder that not everyone in this company was against me. The meeting ended with a unanimous decision to terminate Mr. Vance and the head of IT. I was vindicated. My name was cleared. I walked out of the conference room in a daze, my folder of evidence still clutched in my hands. Beth was waiting for me at my desk. Her eyes were red, as if she had been crying. Claire, I heard. I'm so sorry. I should have told you about the file sooner. I was so scared of Mr. Vance. He threatened to fire me if I said anything. I looked at her, and for the first time, I felt a surge of pity instead of anger. She had been manipulated, just like me. She was a victim too. It's okay, Beth, I said. It's over now. You're safe. She threw her arms around me, sobbing into my shoulder. I hugged her back, feeling a strange sense of release. The nightmare was over. My job was safe. Mr. Vance was gone. That afternoon, I called Mark to tell him the news. He was relieved, but I could hear the exhaustion in his voice. His own problems were far from over. The money I had given him had only bought him a few more months. He still needed to find a way to make the firm profitable again. Meet me at the grill on 5th, I said. We need to celebrate. Just the two of us. He agreed, and we met for a late lunch. We sat in a quiet booth, drinking coffee and talking about everything and nothing. It felt like old times, before the secrets, before the lies. Claire, he said, reaching across the table to take my hand. I'm so proud of you. You fought back. You won. I didn't win alone, I said. Leo helped. Beth helped. And you helped. Roger's report was what convinced Mr. Holbrook to call the board meeting. Mark squeezed my hand. We're a team. From now on, we're a team. I wanted to believe that. I needed to believe that. But as I looked into his eyes, I saw a flicker of something I could not name. Doubt, maybe. Or fear. He was still hiding something. I could feel it. But I chose to ignore it. For now, I had won a battle. I was not ready to face another war. Not yet. Not today. Today, I would celebrate. Tomorrow, I would deal with the rest. The week after the board meeting was a blur of paperwork and phone calls. Mr. Vance was gone, and the head of IT was gone, and the company had issued a formal apology to me, which was more than I had expected. Beth was working harder than ever, trying to make up for her mistake, and I had started to trust her again slowly. Leo had been promoted to a senior analyst position, a reward for his courage, and I had made a point to thank him personally. He had just shrugged and said, it was the right thing to do. I wished more people in this world thought like him. At home, things were quieter but not entirely healed. Mark had started going to counseling, which was a step I had not expected. He was still distant at times, lost in his own thoughts about the business, but he was trying. That was all I could ask for. The money from my father's savings account had bought us time, but it had not solved the underlying problem. Mark's firm was still struggling, and I knew it was only a matter of time before the debt came knocking again. Saturday morning, I decided to visit Daniel. I had not spoken to him since the phone call where I had threatened him, and I knew I needed to face him. I could not let the anger fester forever. I drove to his house, a modest two-story in a suburban neighborhood, and parked in the driveway. Sarah's car was not there. That was a relief. Daniel answered the door in his bathrobe, looking haggard and unshaven. He had lost weight, and his eyes were hollow. Claire, he said, stepping aside to let me in. I didn't expect you. I need to talk to you, I said, walking into the living room. It was a mess, dishes in the sink, papers scattered across the coffee table, a layer of dust on the shelves. Sarah was usually a meticulous housekeeper. The state of the house said more than words could. I already told Mom, he said, sitting down heavily on the couch. I told her everything. The money, the bad investments, the lies. She didn't cry. She just sat there and nodded. She said she had always known something was wrong. I don't know if that made it better or worse. It's a start, I said, sitting across from him. What about Sarah? He looked down at his hands. She left. 2 days ago. She said she couldn't live with a liar. She went to stay with her sister. I don't know if she's coming back. I felt a pang of sympathy, despite everything. Sarah had been cruel to me at the birthday dinner, but she was also his wife. She had built her life around him. Finding out that the foundation was a lie must have been devastating. I'm sorry, Daniel, I said. I didn't want that to happen. I just wanted you to be honest. I know, he said, his voice cracking. And you were right. I should have been honest years ago. I was so scared of failing, so scared of being seen as a failure, that I just kept digging the hole deeper. I thought if I could just make one good investment, I could fix everything. But it never happened. I just kept losing. He broke down then, his shoulders shaking with sobs. I did not know what to do. I was still angry at him, still hurt by his betrayal. But he was my brother. He was the little boy who had once shared his candy with me, who had defended me from bullies in middle school. He was family. I moved to the couch and sat beside him, putting my arm around his shoulders. It's okay, I said. It's going to be okay. You're going to pay back the money, one step at a time. You're going to rebuild your life. And if Sarah doesn't come back, you're going to find a way to be okay on your own. He looked up at me, his eyes red and swollen. How can you even look at me? I stole from Dad. I stole from you. I ruined everything. You didn't ruin everything, I said. You made mistakes. Big ones. But you're not a bad person. You're just a person who made bad choices. There's a difference. We sat like that for a long time, the silence filled with the weight of everything unspoken. Finally, Daniel pulled away and wiped his face with the back of his hand. I'm going to start paying it back, he said. I'm going to sell the house. I'm going to get a second job. I don't care how long it takes. I'll make it right. That's all I ever wanted, I said. Not revenge. Just accountability. I left his house feeling lighter than I had in weeks. The anger I had been carrying was still there, but it was smaller now. It was no longer a raging fire. It was a smoldering ember. I could live with that. That afternoon, I visited my mother. She was in her room, sitting in her armchair by the window, a blanket over her knees. She looked up when I walked in and smiled. Claire, you're here. I'm here, Mom. How are you feeling? Better, she said. Now that the truth is out. Your brother came to see me. He told me everything. I've been thinking about it all week. And I've decided something. I sat down beside her. What did you decide? I'm going to forgive him, she said. Not because he deserves it, but because I can't carry the weight of anger anymore. I'm too old. I want to spend my remaining years in peace. If I hold on to this bitterness, it will destroy what's left of me. I took her hand. That's a beautiful thing, Mom. I'm proud of you. She squeezed my hand. And you, Claire. You've been carrying so much. The missing file, Mark's problems, Daniel's lies. You've been carrying it all. It's time to let some of it go. How? I asked. How do you just let go? You don't just let go, she said. You take it one day at a time. You choose to forgive a little more each day. And one day, you realize the burden is lighter. It never goes away completely, but it becomes bearable. I stayed with her for another hour, talking about nothing in particular. The weather, the flowers in the garden, the bird that kept tapping on her window. It was mundane and simple, and it was exactly what I needed. That evening, I came home to find Mark waiting for me in the living room. He had cooked dinner again, a simple pasta dish with garlic bread. The table was set with candles and a bottle of wine. It was almost romantic, like something out of our early years together. What's the occasion? I asked, hanging up my coat. No occasion, he said. I just wanted to thank you. For everything. For giving me the money. For giving me a second chance. For being patient with me. I sat down at the table, and he poured me a glass of wine. We're not out of the woods yet, I said. Your firm is still struggling. We still have debts. We still have a long way to go. I know, he said. But for the first time in months, I feel like we're moving forward. Together. And that's because of you. You held us together. You held me together. I felt tears prick at my eyes. I almost didn't, I admitted. There were moments when I thought about leaving. When I thought it would be easier to just walk away. I wouldn't have blamed you, he said. But I'm glad you didn't. We ate in silence, but it was a comfortable silence. A healing silence. When we were done, I cleared the dishes and Mark helped me dry them. We were standing side by side at the kitchen sink, a simple domestic moment, when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Lily. Mom, I heard about everything. Uncle Daniel called me. He told me the truth. I'm so sorry you had to go through all of that. I love you. I typed back a quick reply, my heart swelling. I love you too, sweetheart. I'll tell you everything when you come home for Thanksgiving. I put the phone down and turned to Mark. Lily heard about Daniel. She said she loves me. Mark smiled. She's a good kid. She gets it from you. I leaned into him, resting my head against his chest. We're going to be okay, aren't we? He wrapped his arms around me. Yeah, he said. We're going to be okay. It was not a perfect moment. There were still so many things unresolved. The business, the debt, the secrets still buried beneath the surface. But for that one moment, standing in the kitchen with my husband's arms around me, I felt a sense of peace. It was fragile and fleeting, but it was real. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with everything that had happened. My mother's forgiveness. Daniel's confession. Mark's promise. The board meeting. The money. It was all too much to process, but somehow I felt like I was starting to make sense of it. I was not alone anymore. I had Mark. I had Lily. I had my mother. Even Daniel, flawed as he was trying. I thought about my father's letter, the one that had started all of this. Use it to protect yourself when you need it most. I had used the money to protect my family, just as he had intended. It was not the way I had expected, but it was the right way. My father had been flawed, just like the rest of us. But he had loved us. And that love was still there, even after all these years. I closed my eyes and let myself drift off to sleep. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. There would be more bills to pay, more conversations to have, more healing to do. But for tonight, I would rest. I had earned it. 3 months had passed since the board meeting, and the seasons had shifted from autumn to the gray chill of winter. The holidays had come and gone, a blur of family dinners and strained smiles. Lily had come home for Thanksgiving and Christmas, and she had been a quiet comfort, a reminder of what I was fighting for. Mark and I were still in counseling, and while it was not easy, it was progress. He had finally cut all ties with Karen, and he had even started to open up about his fears and insecurities. It was not the marriage we had once had, but it was a marriage we were rebuilding, brick by brick. Daniel had sold his house and moved into a small apartment. He was working 2 jobs now, a desk job during the day and a shift at a warehouse at night. He was paying back the money he had stolen, slowly but steadily. Sarah had not come back, but they were talking again, and there was a fragile hope that they might reconcile someday. My mother was doing better too. She had more lucid days than not, and she seemed lighter, as if the weight of the family's secrets had been lifted from her shoulders. I had thrown myself back into work with a renewed sense of purpose. The Midwest Supplies contract had been renewed, thanks to a last-minute effort by my team, and I had been given a bonus for my handling of the crisis. It was not a fortune, but it was enough to make a dent in our debt. Beth was still my assistant, and she had become one of my most trusted allies. Leo had been promoted again, and we had developed a friendly working relationship. He was the kind of person who reminded me that not everyone in the world was out to get me. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon when I decided to go through the box of my father's things that my mother had sent me months ago. It had been sitting in the back of my closet, untouched, a relic of a past I had not been ready to confront. But now, with everything else settled, I felt ready. I pulled the box out, dusted it off, and carried it to the living room. Mark was reading the newspaper on the couch. He looked up as I set the box on the coffee table. "What's that? My father's things," I said. "My mother sent them to me a while ago. I've been avoiding them." He put down the paper. "Do you want me to stay?" "No," I said. I think I need to do this alone. He nodded and went to the kitchen, giving me space. I opened the box slowly, the smell of old paper and dust wafting up. Inside were photo albums, old letters, and a few personal items: his watch, his reading glasses, a worn leather wallet. I sorted through them, smiling at the memories. There was a photo of him and my mother on their wedding day, young and hopeful. There was a letter he had written to me when I graduated from college, full of pride and advice. At the bottom of the box, I found a laptop. It was an old model, outdated and clunky, but it had been my father's. I had never seen him use it, but he had always been a private man. I plugged it in, hoping it would still work. To my surprise, it turned on. The screen flickered to life, and I was greeted by his familiar desktop background, a photo of our family at the beach. I started clicking through the files, not sure what I was looking for. There were old documents, spreadsheets, and a folder labeled Personal. I opened it, and inside was a series of emails. They were all from my father to a lawyer, dated a year before he died. I began to read them, my heart sinking with each word. The emails revealed that my father had discovered Daniel's theft 3 years earlier. He had found the missing money, traced it to Daniel's failed investments, and confronted him privately. Daniel had begged for forgiveness, promised to pay it back, but my father knew he could not. So my father had done something unexpected. He had set up the secret savings account not to protect me, but to protect Daniel. He had intended to give the account to Daniel eventually, once he had proven himself trustworthy. The letter he had left me was a cover, a way to keep the secret safe without revealing the full truth. I felt a cold wave of shock wash over me. The letter I had held so close to my heart, the one that had made me feel so special, was a lie. My father had not been protecting me. He had been protecting Daniel. The money was never really mine. It was always meant to be Daniel's, a lifeline my father had thrown to a drowning son. I sat back on the couch, the laptop balanced on my knees, my mind reeling. All the anger I had felt towards Daniel, all the resentment, all the righteousness, it had been built on a partial truth. My father had been complicit in the cover-up. He had chosen Daniel over me, even in death. And yet, the letter he had written me was still there, still real. He had loved me. He had just loved Daniel too, and he had been willing to do whatever it took to save him. I closed the laptop and sat in silence for a long moment. The rain was tapping against the window, a soft, steady rhythm. Mark came back into the room, a cup of coffee in his hand. He saw my face and set the coffee down. What happened? He asked, sitting beside me. I handed him the laptop. Read the emails. The ones from my father to his lawyer. He scrolled through them, his face growing more serious with each line. When he was done, he looked at me, his eyes full of sympathy. Claire, I'm so sorry. I don't know how to feel, I admitted. I'm angry, but I'm also relieved. It explains so much. Why Dad never confronted Daniel directly. Why he set up the account the way he did. He wasn't a perfect man, Mark. He was just a man trying to hold his family together. Do you want to tell Daniel? He asked. I thought about it. The truth was sitting on the laptop, waiting to be shared. It would change everything between us again. It would give Daniel a justification for his actions, an explanation for why our father had protected him. But it would also hurt him, because he would realize that our father had never trusted him enough to tell him the truth. No, I said finally. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Daniel is finally getting his life together. He's paying back the money. He's trying to rebuild his marriage. Telling him this would only set him back. It would make him feel like his redemption was a lie. But it's the truth, Mark said. Doesn't he deserve to know, maybe, I said. But some truths are too heavy to carry. My father kept this secret to protect Daniel. I'm going to keep it for the same reason. Not to protect Daniel from himself, but to protect him from the guilt of knowing that our father had to clean up his mess twice. Mark nodded slowly. That's a heavy burden to carry, Claire. I know, I said. But I've been carrying heavy burdens for years. What's one more? I closed the laptop and set it aside. I looked at Mark, and for the first time in months, I felt a sense of clarity. My father had been flawed, just like all of us. He had made choices that hurt me, but he had made them out of love. It was not the perfect love I had imagined as a child. It was a messy, complicated, human love. And it was enough. That evening, I called Daniel. He sounded tired, but he was sober and focused. "How's work?" I asked. "It's hard," he admitted. "2 jobs is a lot. But I'm making progress. I paid off another chunk of the debt this week." "I'm proud of you," I said. "Really?" "Thanks, Claire," he said. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I'm grateful for it." "You have it," I said. "Not because you've earned it, but because I've chosen to give it to you. There's a difference." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I love you, Claire. I know I don't say it enough, but I do." "I love you too," I said. "Now get some sleep. You have a long day tomorrow." I hung up and looked at Mark. He was watching me from across the room, a small smile on his face. "You did the right thing," he said. "I hope so," I said. "I'm learning that the right thing isn't always the easy thing." The next weekend, I invited the whole family for a simple dinner. Mark cooked, and I set the table with the old china my mother had given me. Daniel came alone, his eyes tired but clear. My mother came with a nurse, her dementia worse than it had been, but she still smiled when she saw us all together. Lily was home for spring break, and she had brought a friend, a quiet young man named Alex who seemed to make her happy. We sat down to dinner, the conversation light and easy. Daniel talked about his new job, and Lily talked about her classes. My mother asked the same question 3 times, but no one minded. Mark told a joke that made everyone laugh, and I felt a warmth spread through my chest. After dinner, I cleared the dishes and stood at the kitchen sink, looking out at the backyard. The snow was melting, and the first hints of spring were starting to appear. Mark came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist. "Are you okay?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "I am." "Really?" I turned to face him. "Really. I'm not saying everything is perfect. Our marriage is still a work in progress. The debt is still there. Daniel is still rebuilding his life. But we're all trying. And that's what matters." He kissed my forehead. "You're a remarkable woman, Claire." "I'm just a woman," I said. "A woman who made a choice. To stop carrying everyone else's mistakes. To start carrying my own." We walked back to the dining room, where the family was still laughing. Lily was showing Alex old photos on her phone. Daniel was helping my mother cut her dessert. It was not a perfect picture. There were cracks in the frame, shadows in the corners. But it was ours. It was real. Later that night, after everyone had gone, I sat alone in the living room. The laptop was still on the coffee table, a reminder of the truth I had chosen to keep hidden. I picked it up and deleted the emails. Not out of anger, but out of acceptance. Some secrets were not meant to be shared. Some truths were not meant to be told. My father had loved me, and he had loved Daniel. He had tried to protect us both in his own flawed way. I could not change that. I could only move forward. I looked around the room, at the family photos on the walls, the worn furniture, the stacks of books. This was my life. It was not glamorous or easy. It was filled with hard choices and messy relationships. But it was mine. And for the first time in a long time, I was at peace with it. I turned off the lights and went to bed. Mark was already asleep, his breathing slow and even. I slipped under the covers and lay beside him, staring at the ceiling. I thought about my father, about his letter, about his secrets. And I realized that I had not forgiven everyone. Not completely. But I had stopped carrying all the weight of their mistakes. That was my new beginning. It was quiet and ordinary. And it was enough. Spring came slowly that year, but it came. The snow melted, the crocuses pushed through the thawing ground, and the world started to feel alive again. I stood at the kitchen window one morning, watching the sunlight spill across the yard, and I realized I had not felt this calm in a very long time. Mark had found a partner to invest in his firm, a quiet man with deep pockets who believed in second chances. The business was not thriving, but it was surviving, and that was enough for now. We had stopped going to counseling, not because we had fixed everything, but because we had learned to talk to each other again. We still had our silences, our moments of tension, but they no longer felt like the end of the world. Daniel came over for dinner every other Sunday. He was still working 2 jobs, and he still looked tired, but he smiled more now. He had started dating again, a woman from his warehouse shift who did not know about his past. He was not ready to tell her, but he had promised me he would, eventually. Sarah had filed for divorce, but they had agreed to do it quietly, without the bitterness that could have consumed them both. He was paying back the money, one small check at a time. My mother had a good day that spring. She remembered my name, and she remembered Lily, and she even remembered Daniel's theft, but she did not bring it up with anger. She just held my hand and said, "He's doing better now, isn't he?" I nodded, and she smiled, and we sat together in the sunshine like there was nothing else in the world. Lily had decided to stay closer to home for her final year of college. She said she wanted to be near us, but I knew the real reason: she wanted to be near Alex. And I was glad. My daughter was growing up, and she was finding her own path, and I could not have asked for anything more. I still thought about my father sometimes. I thought about his letter, and his secrets, and the laptop I had deleted. I had not told anyone about those emails, not even Mark. It was my secret now, my burden to carry. But it did not feel heavy anymore. It felt like a choice I had made, a choice to let the past stay in the past. My father had been a flawed man, but he had loved me. That was the only truth that mattered. One evening, Mark and I were sitting on the back porch, watching the sun set behind the trees. The air was warm, and the birds were singing, and the world felt peaceful. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. I leaned my head on his shoulder. "I'm thinking about how far we've come. About how different things were just a few months ago. We almost didn't make it," he said quietly. "But we did," I said. "We're still here. We're still together." He put his arm around me. "I love you, Claire." "I love you too," I said. And I meant it. Not with the desperate hope of a woman trying to save her marriage, but with the quiet certainty of a woman who had chosen to stay. I had not forgiven everyone. I had not forgotten everything. But I had stopped carrying all the weight of their mistakes. And that was enough. We sat in silence, watching the sky turn from orange to pink to deep blue. The stars came out one by one, scattered across the darkness. It was a simple moment, an ordinary evening in a life that had been anything but ordinary. But it was mine, and I was grateful for it. I did not need a grand resolution or a perfect ending. I just needed this: peace, patience, and the quiet courage to start again.